Hi everyone, this is Christy with the Utah Cancer Control Program. Today is session 3 in the Motivational Interviewing webinar series, and with that I will turn the time over to our presenter, Nathan Agri.
All right, welcome back to our presentation. Sorry about that, we had a little technical difficulty. So today we are going to be talking about developing empathy and using the OARS approach. So we're going to be going through this stuff today, but first we're going to do kind of a quick review of what we talked about last week and just some of the things we went through, and hopefully you had an opportunity to use some of those skills from last week. But real quick, just as a reminder, the things we talked about last week were first learning to recognize resistance. We'll talk just a little briefly about that. We talked about the stop, drop, and roll technique. We also talked about how to respond to resistance, and we talked about some communication tools, voice tone, different levels of reflection. We talked about those 4 levels. And then the reflection tools, which again, hopefully you've got the opportunity to use some of those tools, and I'll go over them briefly to just kind of remind us. So first off, just remembering what resistance looks like. So you've got to remember, resistance in your clients is going to be different with each person, but typically what we're seeing is, the loud resistance is going to be the arguing, the interrupting you, kind of challenging your authority, denying the things that you're saying, trying to discount what you said, blaming, disagreeing, all these kind of things. And I was with a group last week doing a presentation with dietitians who is doing similar things that you do, and a lot of what they talk to resistance they see are things like, clients they won't even know that they need to get on the diet they're supposed to do. They'll kind of avoid doing the diet. They'll do it kind of, and so we see again a lot of this half-effort kind of resistance. The quiet resistance, again, that's going to be they don't show up for appointments, they're ignoring you, they're passively agreeing, so they'll kind of agree with some of the things you say, but they won't follow through on everything, which again can be really frustrating because a lot of time that quiet resistance, it looks like they're agreeing with us, but then when they leave, they don't follow through on anything. It can be obviously really frustrating. So then that stop, drop, and roll technique we talked about, again, when you see that resistance, that first step is going to be you want to stop arguing. Don't get into the tug-of-war battle. If you remember when we talked about that, you think of a rope or having a tug-of-war. If I pull on one side, your natural inclination is going to be to pull on the other side. And so we just want to, stop that arguing. Don't feel like you've got to defend your position. Again, if they're throwing up that resistance, it's we're getting on that decisional balance where we're hopping on the opposite side, so they're going to naturally fight the opposite of what we say. So you don't want to, if you're doing the explaining and they're just not taking it, or even the persuading and trying to push them over to your side, again, it's not going to work. So we want to stop doing those behaviors. You want to drop, and again, it's all about dropping your agenda and try to get into their head, and that's what those reflection strategies are about, is learning to understand your client and then roll with the resistance. So going back to some of those tools we talked about, using those to, again, avoid, and going back to our dance concept, dance with your clients. So that resistance doesn't become a real big point of contention. Now, those resistance levels we talked about, remember there's these 4 levels, and that most basic of level is going to be, just, trying to guess what they're saying and, responding back, and you want to approach it like the curious scientist. Where again, you're kind of forming a hypothesis, you're not quite sure, got to modulate that voice tone, and again, our example there is your health really a problem for you versus your health is really a problem for you. One is the form of kind of a challenge, the other is just kind of a statement, a statement that you understand what's going on with them. So again, try to modulate that voice tone and be careful of that. Now those specific tools we talked about, the first was that simple reflection. That's the easiest and kind of can be your go-to thing. And that's where you repeat back what you heard. Now again, don't do it word for word. That's going to, remind you of when you were a kid and your little brother or sister was, just copying everything you said. That gets annoying real quick. But again, you do that simple reflection where you repeat back almost exactly what they said, but maybe you change up a couple words. Now the next One up is the complex reflection, which again, you're going to guess what the meaning is below what they're saying. So this one, again, this one can be a bit risky because, again, you're making an assumption about what lies beneath the surface message. But again, if you're correct, you're going to help that client feel really understood and maybe even help them learn something about themselves. Now, the amplified reflection, that's kind of the sarcastic one, and that's where you basically take on the negative side of their argument, and just reflect it back. And again, I always recommend that you put some sarcasm in your voice, or make it kind of humorous, that kind of thing. Let them know that you're really kind of jumping on the other side of the bandwagon, but almost always, they're going to respond back with the other side of the argument. Now, certainly you got to be careful because some people don't do this well, and you run the risk of your client agreeing with you and saying, well, yeah, you're right, I can't do this, or I'm not going to follow through on this diet, or I'm not going to follow through on these things. So you just got to be careful with that one. The double side of reflection, which is probably my favorite, is again responding to the ambivalence. So you're going to fight both sides. So, and I always recommend probably start with the negative side of their ambivalence and end with the positive side, because we want to kind of try to, again, leave that positive impression in their mind. That would be things like saying, oh, well, on one hand, you tell me this diet is too hard for you, but on the other hand, you tell me that you really want to lose some weight and get more healthy. So again, you honor both sides of the ambivalence. Now, shifting focus, this is just moving the conversation away from one thing to something else. And really anytime you get mired in, maybe a particular point of confrontation that just is not going anywhere, you can do this kind of subtly where you just introduce a new topic, or you can even, ask the client, well, we haven't been able to agree exactly on your calorie intake or how you're going to implement these lifestyle changes, but I'm wondering if we could maybe talk about the meeting you're having with your doctor tonight. Again, so you're shifting focus still in kind of a subtle way, but you're moving away from a point of contention to something else. Oh, and those last two, again, ask for permission. That's going to be an easy one. You just always ask their permission to give you an alternative view. And I like to use this one a lot, and a lot of times I kind of combine it up with shift focus and emphasize personal choice. But you're just basically asking them, hey, can I give you another way of looking at this? Or can I offer my opinion? And they'll always say yes, pretty much. But again, this kind of gives you permission to tell them maybe something harder, or again, give them that advice, or kind of give them that little shake-up that you need to. But again, when they've given you permission, they're going to be a lot more open to hearing it. And then that very last one, emphasizing personal choice, just always highlight that it's their choice. They can do what they want. You're not trying to pressure them or push them one way or the other. Even as an adult and a human being, they have the right to follow through on the things they're saying or to not. So I just want to make sure we emphasize that. So let's kind of move on to today's topic then, which is going to be the OARS approach. Now, the OARS approach, again, this is a great way to interact with clients, and it really is going to help you develop that empathy and understanding of your client and help them feel heard. So this first section we're going to look at is, again, how do we do open-ended questions? So here's just a little test. So think about these. So which is the best of these three things? Is overeating a problem for you? Again, open or closed-ended question. I think it's pretty obvious. That's a closed-ended question. They're going to say no or yes. That second question, how much of a problem is overeating for you? Well, again, it's a little bit better, but still a closed-ended question, meaning that it's not going to leave much room for debate or explanation. They're going to say, well, it's kind of a problem, or no, it's not much of a problem. Then the last one, what concerns you about your overeating? Again, we're still asking the same thing, but we just did it in a very open style. It's going to require them to give us more than a one-word answer. They're going to have to explain that a little bit. And that's where you're going to get volume. You're going to get more chances to, find that change talk and double down on it, basically, just to really mine it. So in communication, again, our goal is to get that client to talk a lot about the factors related to the problem. Again, we want them to be giving us all sorts of great reasons why they want to change. This goes back to our very first webinar where we talked about identifying change talk. Because again, this is going to build their motivation to change. The more they're talking about the reasons they need to change, why they can change, their ability to change, their needs, they're going to start, psyching themselves up essentially. And the other thing is it gives you more material to build your relationship with them. And like we talked about in that first webinar, relationship with a client is key. That's probably about 80% of the effectiveness of any interaction. It's going to be how well they get along with you. And if they believe that you're giving them good advice, you can be trusted, again, they're going to be more likely to actually do something about it. So we want to always be encouraging this open communication. Now, how to get volume? Again, these open-ended questions are typically far surpass the closed-ended questions. Now, certainly there's a time and place we have to ask those closed-ended questions. Sometimes we just have to, ask things like, oh, do you have insurance? Have you been following your diet? And typically this will be in the form of when we're going over the forms or specific things we've got to fill out with people. But try to kind of add in those open-ended questions anywhere you can, because a little later today we're going to see a little video on an example of this, and you'll see very, very clearly how closed-ended questions really kind of keeps a specific client that's in this little role play we'll be watching from, developing some insight and really kind of, building talk that's going to help him change long-term. Versus these open-ended questions, again, makes your client think a little bit more and really own that desire to change. But like it says, furthering responses, you want to make sure to attend to content, look at the verbal and nonverbal. When you're sitting with somebody, you get a lot of those nonverbal cues. Maybe they have a look that says they're confused, or maybe they're nodding their head that they really get it, or again, maybe their body language is saying something else entirely different. But that's a chance for you to attend to that nonverbal content you see. The other thing, when you're using open-ended questions or getting more volume from them, you can connect different ideas together, which again can make it more powerful. If somebody's telling you, yeah, well, my wife's telling me I need to change, my doctor's telling me I need to change, and I've, started to not feel as well, maybe connecting all those responses up could be something like, well, it sounds like your health is really in decline and a lot of people are noticing, and it's starting to affect all areas of your life. Yeah, you're right. Again, that's maybe just a quick example of how we connect up a whole bunch of ideas. And always ask additional questions. When they're giving us those open-ended questions, they're going to give you a lot of things to, again, a lot of change talk that you can ask more questions and get more detail. In this presentation I did last week, this dietitian said, she'd been working with this guy, and he's housebound, and his blood levels were blood sugar levels were spiking, and he was starting to have a lot of problems. And the initial questions are just, well, are you eating well? Well, no. Well, why not? Well, because, and again, that why not question, opened up a whole bunch of stuff, and found out that his wife, he's wheelchair bound. His wife had gone to visit her, a family member for about 3 weeks, and all he was eating, he was only eating once a day and was eating TV dinners, and again, they have high salt content, not healthy, and by doing just some open-ended questions, finding out more about this, she was able to figure out a lot more than what the initial nurse had found out, asking a bunch of closed-ended questions. To summarize, we're going to go over that a little later. And summarize is just, giving them or reflecting back everything that you've heard. So kind of, helping them in their mind make sense of all the information they've given you. And reflective listening, we've kind of talked about that, and again, these go back to your tools, the simple reflections, the complex reflections, but that's going to help you clarify meaning and get things kind of straight. So now in contrast, closed-ended questions, and again, I think these aren't too hard to identify once we know what we're looking for, but, they have that short answer, like a yes or no, like the example I said, did you drink this week? Again, it's a yes or no question. Ask for specific information. What's your address? Again, that's a time where you're going to probably need a very closed-ended question. Maybe it's a multiple choice. What do you plan to do? Quit, cut down, or keep on smoking? Again, looking over forums. I know in my practice I've got a lot of forums like that again, are kind of closed-ended, and it doesn't take too much to switch those around and make them an open-ended question. Now, again, it's going to limit your client's answer options whenever you ask those closed-ended questions. These closed-ended questions, they also set an expectation that your client will have to ask questions, and the client will then, give these passive kind of responses. They're not going to be actively engaged in that interview that you've got with them. They're not going to be really invested in things because it's just a yes, no, yes, 4 times, again, maybe some numbers. And like I said, typically this is going to happen the very first time. And, I think there's easy ways, even in the first session when we've got, to get some of these things out to, just ask some open-ended questions. Maybe it's going to be, tell me about your health concerns. What's going on with that? How healthy do you feel? Or, in my line of work, a lot of times the first thing I say is, well, what do you expect to get out of this therapy session? What's your biggest concern? Again, very open-ended questions, and then I'll go into more of the specifics, like tell me about your eating, sleeping, exercise patterns. Have you ever been diagnosed with things? And again, I think it easily translates into any field where we have to fill out kind of forms. And the other thing is try to get your clients to fill forms out ahead of time if possible. If they're waiting in the waiting room, and a lot of times we have long waits while they're waiting to get in to see you, see if you can get them the forms and get them to fill out all those, simple close-ended questions ahead of time so you can get into more depth and use more of these open-ended questions. Now, these open-ended questions, again, we've already been talking about these, but they're going to encourage open expression. So they're going to really encourage your client to, talk about what they think, what they like. It's going to open up that door to more communication. They're going to give you a lot more volume. It also suggests that you don't have an agenda to get certain things, and again, we may have to still get certain things, but there's easier and better ways to do it when we use these open-ended questions. And again, the responses can be really broad. And just like the example I gave you with this guy who is, eating TV dinners every night, again, those responses, while they can be broad, you can get a lot better, more in-depth, and pertinent information from your clients when you use these open-ended kind of questions instead of, again, the closed-ended things. So the question now is, when do we use these? So, and here's kind of some examples. So as we go through these, just maybe think in your head what it is. So that first one, what would you like from treatment? Again, pretty open. I already gave that as an example. That's going to open up the door for what they want. Was your family religious? Again, pretty obvious that's a closed-ended question, yes or no. Tell me about your drinking. What are the good things and the not so good things about it? Again, very open, and you've kind of combined two things there. If you were to quit, how would you do it? Again, very nice and open-ended question. Plus, we're kind of putting the solution in their box, getting them to give us an idea about this. When is your court date? Again, closed-ended questions. I think that's pretty obvious. So just some quick guidelines as we're doing this is, first off, try to ask fewer questions. So don't ask 3 in a row. When we do 3 in a row, again, it starts that pattern of our client thinking, okay, this is all just about checking the box. So maybe you ask two questions, and then you get some clarifying stuff, or you do some reflection, or some empathy building things. I always want to be asking more open-ended questions rather than closed. And again, like I said, there may be some closed-ended questions that we have to do just because, that's part of working in our agency. And I like that offer 2 reflections for each question asked. So every time you ask a question, try to give some, a couple reflections. Again, that helps your client feel understood. It gives you a chance to perhaps summarize and make sure that you're understanding what they're saying. So here's just some examples that I came up with. What will we be doing after this change that you're not doing now? Again, very open-ended. You can kind of look through those. Some other ones I like, how will that help you? Again, when they tell you they're doing something, whether it's bad or good, gives you a chance to get them to explore things. What tells you that you're ready for this change? Again, that's building confidence, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit later today. How did you know that this is the right time? Again, helping them explore, their own motivations for things. And, going down in kind of the preparation phase, what will you do this week? I like that. That goes back to our change talk strategies, the DARN CT. That talks about commitment. It's commitment language right there. So again, a couple different examples, and I'm sure you can come up with a whole bunch of different ones in your head. So let's move past the open-ended questions and now move to the affirm here. So affirmations, affirmations are going to emphasize the strength in your client. Again, this is all part of attending to the relationship, but it's also going to help build confidence, which again is our next piece we're going to talk about. You're going to notice and appreciate a positive action. Another thing I always say with this is be genuine. Don't respond to something that's really not worthy of response. Sometimes I think we fall into this trap of feeling like we've got to give false compliments to build a relationship. And I think most of us can tell when somebody's being false or when they're kind of, blowing smoke at us, when they're just trying to say things to garner, some kind of positive will from us. So just be genuine in the praise that you give them. and always try to express that positive regard and caring. Again, we want to look at our clients as having strengths, not as weaknesses, or not just defined by their problems. And just some examples that I said there. Something might be, thanks for coming in today. Again, especially with a client who has trouble making appointments or being on time, that might be a real affirmation of a strength that they, took the time to come and see you. Giving compliments along the way. I like the way you said that. Again, if somebody's maybe taking ownership of something they've done, or if they're, building on a positive strength, or whatever it is. Again, give them real compliments. And expressing hope or care or support. I hope this weekend goes well for you. Again, hope is a really important factor in any change process, and any time that we are supporting hope in our clients, again, we're helping push them more towards the positive thinking, more towards a desire to do something good. So we always want to try to leave them with a bit of hope. So that's kind of our affirmations. So let's move to reflections. Now, again, we've kind of already talked about reflections, but it just is kind of a quick review. These are statements rather than questions. So again, we are not asking them in a reflection. We are, again, reflecting back what we heard. And that desire is to develop that empathy, help them feel like we understand. So you're making a guess about your client's meaning. It goes back to that complex reflection. Is you really need to be looking at, well, what's driving this behavior, or what's driving the comment they just gave me. Now, usually most questions can be turned into reflection. And if you remember back to our last webinar, we talked about how when you ask one of those questions, just cut the question part of the sentence out and just make it, again, a blatant statement. So an example might be if your client says, I've been having trouble with my eating, instead of saying, are you having trouble with your eating, you would just say, so eating's a problem for you. Then you kind of change it, and you're not saying exactly what they said, but you're making a statement rather than a question. So, like the example I gave you, you think of your question. So, do you mean that you are angry? Cut the question words. So, do you mean that? Again, that's the question part. And just repeat the rest. You are angry. Again, you can do this with anything, really. And again, that is going to make or help your client feel heard. So, like we talked about, we're using our simple and our complex reflections. Typically the complex are going to be better, but the simple is a good way to go if you're not quite sure what's going on, or if, again, you just need to refer back to something. So again, that simple reflection, it's not going to go beyond what the client expressed or meant. It's going to use very similar language. You're going to paraphrase things. And using it in a poor way is going to be parodying back of the client's language or focusing on low priority comments, things that aren't really important. So make sure when you're using this simple reflection, use it with something that has some meaning or that's important, not on just the, regular ridiculous things or, the filler stuff. Now the complex reflection, like I said, it's going to be the better one to use, because here you're looking underneath what they're saying. You're reading between the lines, as I said. You provide or push for connections between ideas, so here you're connecting those dots up, like we said. And using this in a poor way, again, is moving too fast for a client. Attempting to be the expert, especially if you're doing this with right off the start. Again, it can kind of feel like you're trying to act like you know more than you really do at this point. You haven't really done the work yet to know what's underlying. So usually you're going to start out with the simple reflections and then move towards the complex as soon as you can. Now the last thing in this OARS tool here is the summarizing. So summaries, again, this is you are collecting together all the material that your clients offer to you. And again, you're going to kind of present them as kind of an end cap to what you've heard. Because a lot of times as you're going through an interview with somebody or a session or a evaluation, they're going to give you a whole bunch of information, but they're not going to really remember everything they've said. So this, again, gives you a chance to link everything together. So again, some of the examples I said, put down there are, so far you've expressed concern about your children, getting a job, and finding a safer place to live. Again, that conversation could have been a half an hour or even an hour, and there you're just kind of covering the highlights. Now again, linking, the example I've got there is, that sounds a bit like what you told me about that feeling, that lonely feeling you get. Again, you're linking it to something else they said, or maybe even to a deeper need or issue that's going on. And the last thing is drawing together what's happening and transitioning to a new task. So as you're moving on to something else, it's great to summarize because it puts things in people's mind. So, the example I put there is, before I ask you the questions I mentioned earlier, let me summarize what you've told me so far and see if I've missed anything important. Again, you give the summary, whatever it is. So again, this is an easy tool, but try to do it. It will give your interviews with people, your assessments, your sessions with people, just a better feel, more organized feel. Now what we're going to do is we are going to watch a quick little video. It's about 15 minutes or so, and what this is it's some people in a corrections facility, so probation officers, and they'll give you a little minute kind of explanation about this guy, his issues that he's coming in with. What he's going to be he's going to be meeting with two different parole officers. And I think it's going to be real quick to you which one is using some of these motivational interviewing tools and which one isn't. And just see how the conversation flows. Also, as we go through, maybe on a piece of paper, write down what you see them doing. So we'll kind of talk about the tools that you saw in there, and also kind of discuss real quickly about the good and bad that you saw. So with that, we'll see if we can technically get this going. Give us just a second here. I don't hear anything on mine.
Thanks for coming, Mike. I want to first want to move into seeing you role-playing a client, but I want to give the audience a little background how you got put on probation and a little bit about yourself.
I'm an offender who got sentenced to 18 months probation. I have to pay restitution. I have community service. I'm on probation for 18 months, and I had pretrial anger management classes that my attorney recommended that I take to help with the case.
Okay. Well, let's move to see the role play, and we're going to see two interactions of you with two different probation officers and the two different strategies.
Okay.
Okay.
Come on, Joe. Why don't you have a seat? Miss Morris, how you doing?
All right. How you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
How's your weekend?
Busy. Working a lot of overtime.
That's good.
Yeah. Squeezing some community service. I want to get that done.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of overtime, so
right.
make a lot of money.
Yeah, but it comes in, it goes out. It's like I don't know where it goes. It comes, I get it. It looks good. I'm in there at 6 in the morning. Yeah, I mean bills. It just goes, and I'm not saving anything. But I am paying restitution.
Death and taxes.
Yeah, death and taxes. You know what? My father said the world wasn't made for a working man, and he wasn't kidding. I don't have a silver spoon in my mouth, except the one I
The
put.
plastic one.
Yeah, but I put it there myself.
So
I need the overtime.
So you get a lot of overtime.
A lot of overtime.
Good. Stay busy. What else is going on?
Nothing. Community service. I did some this weekend.
What do you have left then?
62 hours.
62 to go.
Yep. I got it
That's
mapped
6
out.
months. Right. So
Yeah, I got it mapped out.
sure nothing goes wrong. You want to get through your probation. So you got to get 62 hours done. All right? Okay.
Hey,
what's up?
I got some questions on that McKinsey practice report that you wanted.
Yeah.
When do you need that by anyway?
I can't remember if I knew.
Noon.
Yeah.
We recognize you guys are not seeing the video, but I guess just listen to the audio. We're having some technical problems here.
So I need to ask you about, well, you got the charges and the doc numbers, but I don't know which charge goes with which docket.
Okay, so leave the doc numbers out.
All right.
The breach of peace goes with a written one,
Okay.
and the DWI goes with manship. So if you can fill them out, leave those out. we can plug them in when I'm done.
Okay, and you need it by noon.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, I'll see what I can do.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
We're talking about community service?
Yeah.
All right, so you got to map out. You're going to get that done. Make sure
Knock wood.
that you make sure that it gets done. What else going on?
That's really it. Not spend a lot of time with my family, which I would like to do. Well, last night there was an incident.
What do you mean by an incident?
Well, police had to come to the house.
What happened?
My wife didn't pay a bill on time. We got a late fee. I mean, a lousy $10. But, you know, I lost my temper because, you know,
Did they
my
arrest
son
him? Did you get arrested?
didn't get arrested. No.
All right, that's good.
No, didn't get arrested.
You got to go to court?
Nope, nothing.
So nothing happened.
No, by then it was calmed down. She had calmed down. We said a lot of things that, you know, we shouldn't have said. They just said if they had to come back out, they would write us up.
And they didn't have to come back out.
No.
So
come back out.
you have nothing in court?
Nothing, nothing in
No
court,
warrants
nothing,
coming from this?
Absolutely nothing. I swear to God.
All right, so good. You didn't get arrested.
No,
You know what happens when you get arrested.
I know,
All right,
I know. And
We
I
talked
don't,
about it before. I think when you start your probation, you get arrested. You know, no matter how you're doing
No.
community service restitution, my hands are tied.
I told my wife,
It's up to you at that point.
I said, I don't want to get arrested. I
It's
go
not
to
up to your
jail.
wife. All right, she's
I
not
know.
going to jail. All right, it's up to you at this point. So you know what you got to do. Don't get arrested.
I know.
All right,
Just
so
lost my temper. I don't know why.
don't let it happen again.
Okay.
All right. What about the restitution?
Restitution's coming along. I got one more payment to make, and I should be able to make it either this week or next week.
All right. So last time you had two, so you made a payment.
Made a payment, yep.
All right,
And
you have a
one more.
receipt for the payment?
You know, I do. And I left it home in my rush to get here this morning.
How many times have you brought me receipts? You know what you got to do.
I know.
All right,
I
so
was tired. I'm working late.
I'll have an extra cup of coffee next time, and then bring me the receipt. So I really need that receipt for my case notes. So you got to give me a copy of
You
that.
want the original, or is a copy okay?
Just bring it in here. I'll make a copy of it.
Okay.
All right. So I got to get that.
Do you want me to come by tomorrow, or maybe during the week?
You know, bring it next time I see you.
Okay.
All right? Bring it in. You keep the original once you leave, because anything happens in the end of your probation, you might have to supply proof of payments.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
What else is going on?
That's really about it. Just, like I said, not spending a lot of time with my family.
You're still living
Still living there. It's just not as, you know, with all the overtime. You know, just last night, I wish I didn't lose my temper.
there. Okay. What about, you see the victim at all?
No. Well, I do.
He lives there, right?
He lives there, but, you know, with all the overtime, he's on the stairs, I go to the elevator. He goes to the elevator, I go to the stairs.
All right. So
I don't want
you're
nothing to do
avoiding
with it.
him. What else?
Absolutely.
All right. Good. So if you run into him at the Stop and Shop,
I walk out.
all right.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, stupid. I shouldn't have.
Well, you can't have any problems with him now. What's
I know.
done is done. But I think if you're staying busy, you know, staying home and staying busy, avoiding him, don't get arrested, all right, you'll be okay.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I lost my temper, and I was wrong. I look back at it now, but you shouldn't keep talking in my spot.
But you know now, right?
I do know that.
All right.
It
You
won't
know
happen
you're not going to
again.
do something crazy
Nope.
again. All right. So
All right, keep my head down, just trying to keep straight.
how is a month from today?
It's fine with me.
All right. Why don't we go, so it'll be the 7th, same time?
Okay.
All right. And you're going to bring me the receipt.
I'll bring
I'm
you
going to
the
make you a little
receipt,
note right here so you don't forget this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go back to prison if I didn't pay $75.
Okay. I don't want you to go back to prison.
All right.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll see you in a month with the receipts. Stay out of trouble.
Okay.
All right. How are you?
Doing okay. Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, we're going to pause for a second here. Now, just before we look at this next one, what you saw there, again, was, and you heard, was, again, not the most horrible of things, but, you know, certainly wasn't the best of things either. And, yeah, he got the questions answered he needed to, but if you notice, you didn't hear any reflections in there. It was really all about that probation officer's agenda with this client, and nothing about this other, you know, what this guy had gone through, why he'd had, you know, what this new incident meant. Likely he's going to go out and not have much understanding into what he did or what he needs to change. I mean, yeah, he needs to bring in some receipt. He needs to check in with his probation officer a little bit more, but again, it's not really helping him understand what he needs to do. So we're going to start it up again, and again, we're trying to get the video to work, but I don't think we're having any luck, so you might just hear the second audio here again. So Go ahead.
Weekend was good. You know, like every weekend, it was just a lot of work, busy. Overtime.
Yeah. So things are kind of busy.
Yeah.
Well, let me explain what I want to do today. Just like always, just want to touch bases, see what's been happening that affects your probation, and then we'll talk about what goes on next. So what developments have there been that might affect your probation?
Made another restitution payment, so I got one left.
Okay. Good for you. You're really making headway with that, then.
Yeah, it's important. I definitely want to keep on top of this. I don't want to go back to jail.
It's really important to you to comply with your probation.
Absolutely. I don't want to get blown over $75.
Yeah, it's kind of insignificant thing to have to go to jail for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what else is? Do you have the receipt?
No, I didn't bring the receipt with me.
Okay.
I do have it though.
All right. When are you bringing in the next time I meet with you?
Okay.
What else is going on?
Community service. I have 5 hours left.
Okay.
I did some this weekend. It's kind of hard with work, but I'm able to get it done. And
All right, good. So you're almost done with it then.
yeah, and I'm glad. I want to get this over and done with.
Yeah, it's important to you to satisfy all the conditions of your probation.
Absolutely. I don't want to get any more trouble.
Good for you. All right. So, and what else is going on?
Hey, Tom, I have some questions on that McKenzie progress report that you wanted me to do.
Okay. Could I get back to you in like 15, 20 minutes?
Oh, yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, something happened last night. I don't know if it's that important, but my wife and I got into an argument. You know, she made a late payment on the television. We got charged with a late fee. What I got arrested for, I lost my temper and kicked in the TV set.
It's almost like the same thing happened all over again.
Yeah. Police came. But then I was calmed down. She was calmed down, you know. I realized how stupid it was. She realized, you know, but we said a lot of things we regret.
So the police ended up showing up.
Yeah, they showed up. By the time they got there, it was, like I said, it was all over and calmed down, so
Yeah.
that was it.
It kind of was over pretty quickly.
Yeah, just like, you know,
How did it come about that the police showed up?
my daughter got scared, and she called the cops. And I'd never seen her that frightened before. I didn't like it. Yeah, I just lost my, again, I just lost my mind. And
She was scared of you at that point.
yeah, I didn't like that look on her face at all. You know, as soon as I do it, as soon as I have time to think about it, it was already too late to undo. So she got really scared. You know, my wife and my daughter, those two most important things in my life.
So almost without even thinking about it, you almost lost some pretty important things to you.
Yeah, it was A to Z. Just like when I broke the windshield, you know, just A to Z.
Yeah, the same thing. Something kind of seemingly insignificant, and then the consequences seem to be real big.
The consequences are I go back to jail, and you know, it's stupid.
That's
Especially over a lousy $10.
Going to jail over $10.
Yeah. Next.
And then just real quick, I want to point out that was really good need talk that this probation officer just went into. He talked about why this guy, on a very deep emotional level, feels pretty awful and wants to change this behavior. You also notice some simple reflections in there. He's going to keep doing this, but hopefully you can already tell the difference between these two interviews, where this one feels, again, a lot more real, I guess, and this client feels a lot more motivated to change. I mean, this probation officer is plugging in directly to why this guy has a desire to change, you know, versus the guy before. He just kind of blew him off and, I'm not going to do it. It wasn't that big of a deal, minimized the whole thing. And I think we can all tell that, you know, likely this guy's going to go out and do the same thing again under that context. Now, certainly this, you know, doesn't mean he's not going to go out and reoffend or mess up or have another domestic violence incident. But this definitely is building that desire in him to not do it. Because, again, he just talked about how horrible he felt that his daughter saw this and the look in her eyes. So, again, keep paying attention to what he says here. We just got a couple more minutes of this.
What could have happened last night?
Yeah. What were some of the other downsides of what happened last night?
I didn't like the look on my daughter's face. I don't want my daughter and my wife to be afraid of me.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling.
No, as a matter of fact, it made me sick to my stomach to see my daughter look at me like that.
Yeah.
I wish I could undo it. I wish I could have just stopped myself.
Kind of wish it never happened at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it did happen.
Yeah. I just have no control over it.
You can't control what happens when you get angry. Like
No,
that.
I just go and then
It was a double-sided.
back and think, man, what was I thinking?
You know, after it's all over with, you can't even really figure out why it all took place.
I wish I could, but I mean, like there when I had my case pending before I got sentenced, I was taking classes. In the first 3 or 4 classes, I didn't even pay attention. But just the last couple, I started to pay attention. It was making some sense, but then I was done, and I got probation, and I was like,
So you really didn't get a whole lot out of it at that point.
nah, I didn't put a lot in, didn't get a lot out, and just when I was done.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. You had, just like that first thing that you got arrested for, you were on probation, you got angry over something sort of insignificant, and it kind of blew out of proportion real fast. And you're kind of worried now that this could really cost you your freedom and maybe even cost you your family in some ways. Where does that leave you?
So again, that was a great complex reflection right there. Again, kind of combined up with a little double-sided. We'll keep going.
I don't know. I wish there was a way I could fix it or get some help. I don't know where it leaves me.
Yeah. So maybe getting some help with this might have things turn out differently for you.
I'm willing to try it. I want to get done with this probation, and I want to be different.
Yeah. And to get through this probation successfully, you may need to do things differently than you've done up until now.
I'm willing to try.
So what are your options at this point?
I don't know. I don't know. Again, I don't have a lot of money. I mean, the overtime I'm working is paying my lawyer, and so I don't have a lot of money.
Okay, he just gave a whole bunch of status quo. That was a whole bunch of status quo talk there, if you didn't notice. It was all about, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of time. Now let's listen to kind of what this guy does with that.
Money's kind of tight.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where to go.
So you really want to go to some kind of counseling at this point. So if you have a few things to work out, though, maybe to actually be able to pull that off.
If there's something I can do to fix this, I'd want to.
Yeah.
So again, that was really well done where he acknowledged that status quo talk, but he quickly moved to the change talk. He said, well, yeah, you might not know how you're going to get this done, but therapy, and dealing with this stuff is really important to you. Again, a great way to use, to acknowledge both sides of that argument, but to really plug in on, that change talk.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
A lot of jobs have an employee assistance program, and you might have that where you work, and it might be something you can go through that's not going to cost you anything.
Yeah, that is funny.
And again, right there, we heard an ask for permission. So he asked for permission first, then he gave that, reason to do something. He gave that opinion. But again, the client said, well, yeah, I want to hear it, which again makes it a lot more powerful.
I got something in my paycheck, I think, last month. It had something about that, and I wasn't paying attention. I just threw it out because I didn't think it had anything to do with me.
Yeah.
I think I did get something about that.
Okay, so that might be something you'd be able to pursue.
Yeah, they said something about, I saw something about sliding scale and, ability to pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you need to do at this point in order to get that rolling?
I can go, when I go back to work this afternoon, I can go down to personnel and probably get a copy of it.
All right. So you might actually be able to get that going today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think about it, but yeah.
All right. Well, here's what I'd like you to do at this point. I'd like to have you come back in next Tuesday.
Okay.
And you can fill me in on what's happening with the employee assistance program. And how about in the short term? What are some things you might be able to do just between now and next Tuesday to kind of not have any kind of problems with your anger?
Well, maybe, you know what, maybe I'm working a lot. Maybe I need to cut back on that a little bit and spend some more time doing things I enjoy, like spending time with my family.
Okay.
Because even though I need the money, work isn't everything. And if I'm going to come home and just be angry at my wife and angry at my daughter, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
You're going to try to find some fun things to kind of recharge your batteries a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so take a look at the counseling, and I'll see you next Tuesday. It sounds like the other things are going actually very good. So it seems like if you do something about the anger, you're going to have your best chance of getting through this whole thing successfully. And the counseling sounds like it might be something that'll help.
Yeah, I want to try it again.
So when you come in next Tuesday, bring the restitution receipt with you.
Yeah.
Okay. And anything else going on at this point?
That's about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate you talking to me.
So thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay.
Hang in there.
All right, so hopefully you picked up that, and again, you noticed right at the end he did a whole bunch of summary statements. He put it back to the client to talk about what he needed to do. Again, he really skillfully kind of guided that client to, making his own decisions, but agreeing with that probation officer about what needed to be done. And then he connected up all those little points along the way. So I apologize again that you couldn't see the video. Again, it was just two guys sitting in an office talking. But they shared the audio, which is the most important thing. And hopefully that gave you an idea of what this might look like. And hopefully as you listen to that, you can maybe see how effective that second interview was over the first. That first was all about, again, that probation officer's agenda, just kind of checking. I mean, the feel that I really get as I listen to that one is he really just kind of was checking the boxes off. And that second one, it didn't take too much more time. I mean, the first interview is about 7 minutes or so. The second one is, a little bit longer. It's about 9 minutes. So it's only a couple more minutes, but you could feel how much more powerful that was, how much more invested that client was in actually doing something about his treatment versus in the first one, at least the sense I get, is, he's just waiting to get out of there. He did what he needed to. He talked to his probation officer. Now he's out. He's going to go back to doing whatever he was doing. That second one, he felt like this probation officer was invested, cared, and he cared about the time he spent there, and he was actually going to do something about it. He's going to go out and try to work on this counseling, get some of these things done, and control his anger. So in any case, hopefully that kind of gives you a good example of what this is going to look like. Now let's move over. The last thing we're going to probably talk about today is confidence. Now confidence is an important key to motivation because, again, we are not going to really commit to doing any kind of change if we don't believe you're going to succeed. The thing I always see in the addiction field is, people, they don't want to try to quit smoking again or quit drinking again if they've tried it 10, 15 times before. I had a woman I was just working with recently who, again, is a terrible alcoholic. She's in her mid-60s, and she's got liver damage, and she's starting to have really bad health problems. And as I've talked to her about quitting, she said, well, I've gone to the AA groups. I've tried, several times. In fact, I tried last year because my family was pressuring me, and it didn't work. So I don't know why I'd want to try again. That was horrible. I just felt like a failure. Again, our confidence was pretty low. We're not going to enter into any kind of change behavior if we don't think we're going to be successful. Again, what comes back to our mind is it's just a big waste of time. Now, motivation to engage a client in change is going to be strongly affected like this. Like I said, the example I wrote up there is you're not going to start running on a treadmill if you don't have confidence. It's going to make you a stronger runner and lose weight. Otherwise, it's just probably painful exercise that's not too helpful. So to build confidence, there's a couple different things we can do here. First is we've got to work collaboratively with the client. Now, going back to that little role play we heard, you could tell that second probation officer, he was invested in, and he saw his probationee as a partner in this change process. It wasn't him just telling him what to do. The first guy, if you remember, he was checking the boxes off. Are you going to your anger classes? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? The guy gave pretty short, one word or just a couple word answers. Now, the second guy, he was really asking him, what you can do and making him feel a part of things. So again, building that confidence is going to be collaborative with your client. You want to help them develop their confidence, and again, the ways that you're going to do that is you're going to support and respect their autonomy, the fact that they get to choose what they're going to do. That it's really up to them. We can't force them or make them do anything. It's going to be their decision. The nice thing is it gives that client a chance to build some success. Again, I think most of us, If you look at, where does your self-esteem come from, or where does your desire to improve and make changes in your life, and that's typically built upon your past successes. We can almost always draw upon some time when we overcame some kind of challenge or something that was difficult, or we stuck to something, and that builds confidence in us. And so if you've got a client with really low confidence around a certain issue, so again, let's say it's a diet, you talk about, well, when was the time when you were able to exercise? When was the time you did lose a few pounds? When was the time that you were more careful about your eating? Or, again, fill in the blank. Then they're going to give you, again, change talk, and they're going to talk about, well, yeah, 2 months ago I went on an exercise plan for, a month and a half, and I was doing it. I was going to aerobics classes. I was going to the gym. I was walking outside, and I did lose a few pounds. Oh, great. Again, you start plugging into that change talk, you're going to start building confidence in them. And a big key about confidence is reminding people of their strengths. Remind them of the good things. And the way I like to look at this is it's a glass half full mentality. As we talk, or glass half full mentality, where we look at, the good things going on. We don't look at all the negatives. We don't talk about all the problems. But we first want to acknowledge the strengths, what's going well. Now, certainly we are probably going to have to address some of the problems as well. But I'd always start with their strengths and use those strengths to combat whatever deficiencies they have, because they're going to feel, again, more of a success versus more of a failure. When people feel like a failure, they engage in that negative self-talk, which I think all of us are good at negative self-talk, where we beat ourselves up, we talk about why we can't do something. Again, that's motivation killing. Versus if we're engaging in that strength-based forward momentum language, we're going to kind of push ourselves over into the change camp. We're going to feel better about what we're doing. We're going to feel more confident that we can do something. I've already kind of talked about that. You can draw on those past successes. Talk about times where they were successful in whatever change they're trying to make. Now, some questions that I kind of wrote here just to show this is, what would make you more confident in changing? Again, you get them talking about it. What have you learned from past successes? Again, you're getting them to discuss exactly what they've learned, how they've grown, and talk about their confidence in change. What will help? What can I do? Again, talking about, getting them to fill in those blanks. So, really just engaging them, and that goes back to keeping them as a partner in this change. But, you let them dictate what your role is to a certain extent. What are some things you need to make this change stick? And that's probably one of the biggest questions is, I think all of us, we can get all excited about making some change, or, changing our lifestyle, or working out, whatever it is. But does it stick long term? And that's always the question. And maybe helping them identify the point where that motivation and that confidence falls off, and readdressing that can be a good way to kind of build that confidence for the future. And that last thing, what have other people done that has helped them be successful? And that's speaking directly to their resources, going back to our very first webinar. What resources do they have around them? What, people, what, maybe time, it may be money, it may be jobs, and, a whole bunch of things. What kind of things have they, used in the past, because maybe they're not using those things, or they've maybe kind of forgotten. So you can use that in conjunction with, past successes. A couple more questions. What is there about you that would help you do this? Again, we're getting them internally focused on their good things. We're engaging in that positive talk. How might you go about it in order to succeed? Again, all these things, we're building in them confidence. And the last one, what have you done successfully in the past that was like this in some way? Because maybe they tell you, well, I've never been successful in, engaging in a healthy eating plan or an exercise plan. So, get them talking about some other area of their life where they were successful. And relate it, because it'll connect up. And then that last thing is, we want to be reflecting and summarizing these confidence statements. And the summarizing here is real key. And again, if you remember at the end of that role play, that probation officer did some wonderful summaries. He talked about, the forward momentum language this guy had given him, which really reinforced in this guy's mind that, wow, I need to address this. I really need to get on top of this counseling thing. Even though I don't have the money, I got to figure out a way to try to make this happen. And that last thing is you help them see their successes, and then you got to mine it for all it's worth. And in probably our next session, we're going to be talking about how do we mine change talk, and maybe some specific tools about it, that are going to really support those things that we do. So, we'll probably, real quick, we'll talk about just again how we mine change talk, and then I think we're going to save this next section for our last webinar. But change talk, the thing we got to do is we got to recognize it. So anytime we're using these tools, and our reflection statements are going to help us do this, that darn CT mnemonic, that's going to help us do this. When we're building confidence, it's going to help us do this. But we've got to recognize the change talk they give us. Then we've got to get more of it, so evoke it, and we're going to do that with open-ended questions, these affirmations, all these things. We're going to get more of it. And then we reinforce it. We get greedy, where we just keep asking for more and more until the point where they come up with their own solutions, and we're not doing it anymore. So just in kind of a summary, as far as what we've gone over today, again, we kind of reviewed those first resistance tools we used from last week, or 2 weeks ago, I suppose, the simple, the complex, the double-sided, the shifting focus, all those. We've talked about those OARS skills, and specifically I direct you to those open-ended questions, making sure you talk about those and use those. They're really easy to do. Those positive affirmations, this goes back to this strength-based way we look at our clients, using our reflective statements and making sure we do summaries. And again, it's a good thing to do several summaries, or anytime you're going to shift to a different topic, use a summary. We also kind of talked about communication skills and how important those are. And then we went to that confidence piece, and making sure we're building that confidence in our client that they actually want to change. Again, it's a really important really important concept, because confidence with motivation is usually going to equal some positive change action, which is what we want. So that kind of concludes our webinar for today. Remember, try out these tools. Maybe if you just pick one or two things, try it out. Again, the best way to make this work is actually doing it, practicing it. So we'll pick this up next time. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Nathan, for presenting to us today. As a reminder, if you would like to receive nursing credits for this series, you will need to complete the evaluation for today's webinar. You should get an email with a link to the evaluation in an hour. Thanks again, and remember the next webinar is 2 weeks from today. I believe the date is November 15th. It will begin at 9 a.m. Thanks.